Do you see that in the ESPN way too early mock draft? I want to say Jacoby Lane was mocked as high. It was like 12 to like the Cowboys.
I feel like I did see that. I also saw Jaden Mayava potential first round pick, which
not opposed. Not going to say no. Not saying no. I think that's really all just going off of like their potential of like what they could be like. And I agree. I think both those potentials are sky high.
Also, Kamari Ramsey, I think, has been mocked in the first 2 rounds.
Yeah, as he should be. He is the safest. If I had to guess who is going to be the safest day 1, day 2 pick of this year's NFL or this year's USC team, the NFL draft, it would be Kamari Ramsey. Like, can you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, don't we love when like Bruins become Trojans and become better? Like, like Kobe Johnson basketball, he goes to UCLA, gets worse, but when Bruins become Trojans, I mean, Danton Lynn,
look at Kyle Ford, went to UCLA, bad, came back, solid.
Yeah.
And Raiders minicamp. You got invited to the Raiders minicamp.
Yeah, had the last touchdown of the season, right?
Yeah.
So
that moment that meant a ton for him.
Yeah, it just means more at USC. It's like there's 2 sides of LA.
What are we, the SEC now? It just means more?
In California, USC is it just means more. Like Cal, Stanford, UCLA, they don't know what they're doing. But back on track. I mean, I don't think it's ever too early to start talking about the draft. I think it was interesting though seeing Miller Moss last year mocked at 3rd overall to the Giants.
Wait, where'd you see that?
I saw some sources.
Respect to Miller Moss.
I think it was Sports Illustrated after week 1 had Miller Moss, and don't quote me. It was some outlet. I don't know if it was Sports Illustrated. And if anyone in the comments wants to chime in here,
it was probably Sports Illustrated when they were still using like those AI writers.
Yeah, they had Miller Moss mocked at 3rd overall to the New York Giants. He could pop off this year and make himself a first-round pick. He could Heisman.
Tyler Shuck. I mean, that was crazy.
Yeah. We're not going to say the full name again. the other school in LA. The
other LA school.
Pasadena, actually, not even LA. In terms of football.
I was about to say that.
The stadium that USC has been much more successful in historically, like way more, like what is it, 28 Rose Bowl wins, something like that. Sorry, you go.
I was just going to go back to recruiting a little bit because obviously USC is the number 1 class right now. They have 14 more. 12 more commits than the next closest. I think it's 27 to 15 is the next closest. I want to ask you, do you think that USC finishes with a top 5 class?
I think so. I think it's so hard because there's so many what ifs. Like we don't know who's going to decommit, but also like when you have that many bodies coming in, like I know, like, obviously you want quality over quantity, but when you have, even if you have 20 coming in, that's probably still the most.
Someone is going in that list. Yeah.
I mean, again, like we look at who else is really high up in that list. Obviously, I don't even want to say their name, but the team in Indiana, the team in South Bend, LSU's up there, Clemson's up there, Ohio State's up there, Oregon. I didn't even want to say Oregon. They're up there. LSU. I mean, like the SEC schools are going to be tough to edge out just because they're SEC schools. But that's why bringing in Chad Bowden is huge, because I think he's going to be the reason. I think without Chad Bowden, USC has they still have a top maybe 10 class, maybe top 5, maybe.
I don't know. It's hard to argue just because of how many people he's brought in since he was hired.
Yeah,
I mean, it's crazy.
You're right. I mean, he's been huge, and he's been on podcasts and stuff, and he's very public about
our ticker says, Casey, as our little ticker down here. Chad Bowden working miracles.
He is. I mean, again, you poach somebody from a rival, they come and do better things. And he took a Notre Dame team.
Yeah, we were just talking about UCLA. You come to the good part of LA, then you better things happen.
I mean, look, he took a Notre Dame team that, for all I'm concerned, I was pretty, and again, I mean, it's Notre Dame, but I was pretty against Notre Dame. Like what I'm trying to say is I did not expect them to make it far. Their schedule was easy. They won those playoff games, and when it comes down to those close games in the playoffs, it comes down to who is the recruiting and the coaching edge, right? And the culture edge. And Chad Bowden had built a really good culture in a short period of time and didn't have to rely on having a top QB. I think Riley Leonard's a good quarterback, don't get me wrong, but he's no Heisman, or not even close. So I think Chad Bowden coming in here is going to build back that culture that we're seeing. I mean, it's kind of a cliche at this point, but the best in California want to play for SC. Yeah. And that was ruined by the fact that, Lincoln Riley comes in. He doesn't have a connection to LA yet. He still, is trying to establish that. He's from, the SEC, or I guess at the time it was the Big 12, but
SEC country.
So yeah, he's from the southern part of the US. And, a guy like Bowden maybe doesn't necessarily have, the lineage just because he just came over from Notre Dame, but he knows what it takes to get these modern day kids, right? So these Bosco kids, like it's a culture thing. So I think that was a little bit of a tangent, but I think USC certainly can have a top class. Of course, things are going to change. Guys are going to leave, but guys are also going to come in. So yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Look, I just think when USC wins the recruiting trail in California, they win games, they win national titles, they win Rose Bowls, all of that stuff. You need to win California. I just remember, so my freshman year, Jeff Fellenser, one of our professors here at USC, awesome former LA Times sports writer, huge recruiting guy. Pete Carroll was one of our guests in the class, and he told us this story. It wasn't really a story. It was more just whenever he would go to a high school, if you go to a high school in California, if you go to high school in Southern California, it used to be if Pete Carroll or if USC, if Ed Orgeron, whoever it was, offered you, you committed on the spot. No, just that's how it was in the early 2000s. Obviously, USC was winning national titles, all sorts of that stuff. You want to play for USC. These guys want to play for USC in Southern California. Chad Bowden has reestablished that.
100%. Like, I mean, you look at 20 years ago, obviously it's a much different landscape. Like that's even like, that sounds silly to say because it's so obvious. Like, there's no NIL. There's, it's a lot more passion based than money because that's just how it was. It was like most of the guys aren't going to the NFL. They're going to play college football because they love the sport. They love the game. And it felt like USC had the edge in that category because of the historical promises that USC would give to the players. Like, obviously they have 8 Heisman. At the time it was 7 after Reggie Bush, but you have the most, up there for the Heismans. You have the most Rose Bowls out of anybody. Kids love, football players love, young football players want to play important games at the Rose Bowl every year. Look, playing in the Cotton Bowl is cool, but the Rose Bowl, the history behind it, when you come to SC, there's a certain expectation that you are going to be playing in that game, especially 20 years ago. And I know it's a bit different now, and USC has not been a national title contender in quite some time. But at the same time, that history sort of finds a way to repeat itself. Because think about it, USC in the early 90s was not good at all. No, whereas we know in the 70s and in some parts of the 80s, they were very good. And history tends to repeat itself in college football. And so, again, I mean, you come to USC, it might be a 2-3 year process. And I know that sounds like an eternity for college football players when they only play 4 years.
Especially nowadays.
But again, when you put on that SC jersey, especially in the Chad Bowden era, which of course is brand new, but as we're sort of expecting, it means a lot more is what I'm trying to say. It's maybe not the SEC, but the history is, I'd argue, way more rich than most of the SEC schools.
Oh yeah. I mean, apart from Alabama, it's really not a lot of teams who have better history than USC. It really isn't.
Texas is up there.
Texas is up there. Obviously, Georgia's recent. Yeah. Ohio State, Oklahoma, Michigan, Notre Dame. Those are like the only teams I'd put alongside USC. Other than that, USC has better history than all those, than everyone else in FBS, FCS, all those.
And we haven't even talked about the new facilities opening up.
And we see them every single day on campus.
I mean, how freaking cool is it to play in the Coliseum every week, a stadium that is legendary in its own right, but then also be able to, have the Bloom facility popping up hopefully by next season. I think it's expected
2026, right?
So
It'll actually be when a lot of these recruits get on campus. Well, as far as it's promised so far.
I mean, the NIL too, like it's just it's in the academics, it's hard to not even like for us, like I know we try to be as, impartial or partial, sorry, as one of the it's impartial, unbiased. We try to be as unbiased. We are students here. We try to be as unbiased as we can be. But at the same time, it's even if you're a UCLA fan or Notre Dame fan, I'm sure it's really hard for you to not admire SC just because of what they offer. Because I mean, we're seeing it right now. It's the best general manager in the country. You have one of the best coaches in terms of producing talent in the country. We'll see how he can turn that into winning this year and next year and beyond. He's on a huge contract, Lincoln Riley. But and then you're in the biggest NIL, one of the biggest NIL markets in the country. Like there's just so many factors that are going into this, and it's building a new culture that I'll admit, you can chime in on this. Did you expect any of this to happen? Like when we saw that Caleb Williams is declaring for the NFL draft, I thought, wow, all hope is lost for this program. I was seriously in that position.
Well, I didn't think that. I knew he was declaring for the NFL draft.
Well, no, but I'm saying knowing that you didn't have a Heisman QB anymore. I'm just saying as a big picture, like not that was one event, but I'm saying knowing that you had missed out on a huge season in 2023. That steered me away from having hope. And then you bring in just the personnel and the the money. It's huge.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is the time to take it. USC has not properly, in my opinion, taken advantage of the NIL era. And this is the time to do it because we are truly at a place where it's lawless and there's no regulations. There's going to be relatively soon. Obviously, the House ruling was pushed back. What happened with it? This is the time to take advantage of NIL regulations where there are none, is what I should say. And put all your money towards football. Football is the reason that these other sports programs exist. I'm not saying take away money from other smaller programs. I'm saying invest more into football. We obviously are going to have a new president this upcoming term, which we don't know who that is yet. Carol Foltz is stepping down. She was a big supporter of football. She understood the importance of football within a school's atmosphere. So it will be interesting to see how the new president affects, I guess, the football program. Is that crazy to say?
I mean, yeah. I mean, not really. I mean, look, like USC is in a huge deficit financially. I think it's in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And, some of that is because of, it's a myriad of things, right? But football is the reason why USC is a national brand. Like it's an amazing school. It's an incredible academic school, but
our unbiased opinion, of course.
Yeah. But like Jeff Fellenzer himself said this quote that, and I actually don't know if it's his original quote, but the respected LA Times columnist said that, and it's very true, that football is the front porch of a university. Like, would you know about Alabama if they didn't have a football team? Absolutely not. It's just not. It's a university. It's an SEC school, but it's not.
You get yourself there on good school.
Well, that can be.
All due respect to our colleagues, Crimson Tide.
Sure, but the point I'm trying to make is USC is an academic force, but the reason why it's on the map is because of its football team. And I mean, its baseball team is the most winningest, and its women's basketball team has a lot of history, and the men's basketball team has produced some good NBA players. But the football team is one of the best in terms of producing NFL talent, and that their stats to back that up, probably the best. And I want to just highlight this because I think that just goes to what I'm talking about. And we'll get to some of those prior comments in a moment, guys, but keep firing away because I think this is a really good conversation here. Again, the football team is the front porch of your university, and they have to be, as Russ is saying here, all in on football.
Yeah. I know. I 100% agree. It's the cornerstone of a university at this point. It's what it has to be at this point. It's the moneymaker. It funds all other athletic programs, and where is USC without its athletics? So it'll be interesting to see who they bring in. I think it'll probably just be like the vice president or someone like that who's already in the administration. But regardless, they need to care about football.
Also, the athletic director, Jen Cohen, is going to have to put in a little bit extra work.
Right.
Just to make sure. I think she's done a pretty good job so far. I mean, it's a really hard job managing all those sports. And I'll be honest, I don't really know what her day-to-day kind of looks like. I mean,
Can't say either. No, I can't say I'm following Jen Cohen that much.
yeah, but I mean, it's a tough job, and I think she did a good job at Washington with Kalen DeBoer bringing him in. So she has the pedigree, of course. And again, let's go back to some of these prior comments. I mean, yeah, Coach O, the Big O
was doing what Chad Bowden is now. You're locking down the California trail. You're seeing USC win recruits over guys like Oregon. Oregon dominated the state of California for most of the I'll say late 2010s and early 2020s until now, really. Now we're seeing USC reclaim that. That is how you win football games, by reclaiming the state you're in. Alabama doesn't lose guys in Alabama. Georgia sometimes loses guys in Georgia. Florida State, they sometimes lose guys in Florida. Terrible examples. North Carolina, Michigan, those guys, they win their states. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and this, I mean, as well, like Dorian Singer, interesting name that I hadn't thought about in a while.
A lot better. Yeah, that was disappointing.
And then Brew McCoy, I believe, had an issue with a fraternity.
It was off the field stuff. I don't remember exactly what, because obviously we weren't there.
I believe he had trespassed a fraternity.
Is that it?
Yeah.
I swear he did some other worse stuff that we won't talk about. But
yeah, but again, like I think that's somewhat like it brings up a broader conversation of like this USC football team this past few years. It just felt like the culture is not really not just the culture, the chemistry, right? Like chemistry is so big in football because you're brothers. You know, you're living and dying for each other. It's not like basketball where like, you know, guys are getting injured every single game. You know, like football, like what I'm trying to say is the wear and tear of football, you need to have that brotherhood. And it felt like USC with, you know, some of these past few years just hasn't had that. And I think, again, recruiting guys who can kind of relate to each other and like these Georgia recruits getting homesick during the year.
Yeah, look,
help you.
Yeah, I mean, bringing in it's also just bringing. I'm not saying it's a bad idea to bring in guys from Georgia, Tennessee, Texas, wherever. All I'm saying about that is they are still in the heart of SEC country of big schools around them who want them. Look at Xavier Griffin, excuse me. He's taking visits to Tennessee, Georgia still. It's going to be really hard to retain him for the rest of the year and to get him to sign just because he's around all those programs a lot more. Meanwhile, if you're looking at like the guys who are in Southern California, I think it's a lot easier to keep them because you can constantly see them. They're here all the time. And that's not saying that coaches aren't recruiting them constantly, the other guys, but it's a lot easier to do it in California.
And you got to remember, these are 18-year-old kids. Like they come from Georgia. They're not
these kids are 16 because it's class of 2026.
Yeah, I mean, imagine being 16 years old and like knowing that you're not gonna be able to see your family anymore, you know, probably for the bulk of the season.
That's dark.
Well, it's true. I mean, if you're a Georgia recruit coming to SC, you're probably not going to see your family that much. You're probably not going to be able to play in front of your friends, in front of your closest people. It's hard to come that far. And I think that's what we've seen. I mean, obviously there's maybe not concrete evidence to suggest that, but I think guys getting homesick is very much in play. Rick Caruso, there actually was an April Fool's joke that he became the president of USC. I mean, I think financially that would really help them. And
every single student received an email that Rick Caruso was the next president. Then it turned out not to be true.
Yeah. So I don't know if that'll happen, but he did build the USC Village, I believe. So
where you live,
money where your mouth is, I guess. Yeah, I think keep dropping the comments, guys. But I think like the point we're trying to get at is it feels like this USC recruiting jump did not just come out of nowhere. Like there is a culture shift going on behind the scenes. And I think it's huge. I mean, we didn't even talk about the strength coach, Wiley, last name.
Benny Wiley.
Yeah. You know, Wiley was relieved of his duties. And I think that was sort of that
was one of the last of the Oklahoma guys with Lincoln Riley.
And I think that's huge. I mean, I think, look, I mean, those Oklahoma guys, some of them were good. I mean, we know Alex Grinch wasn't, but I think it's a big shift showing that, you know, Lincoln Riley is dedicated to really just put this program in the heart of where it is and what it's surrounded by. And I think, again, like you know, if you bring a guy over from Oklahoma, yes, he's still like, you know, you're all of the same, you know, you all love football. It's all football at the end of the day. But a guy from California, I think there's just a lot more relatability, especially with how, the college football landscape is and how competitive it is. And so I don't know. I think that move will be interesting. Also, like, can we talk about though, like USC in strength did not really go hand in hand these past couple of years, especially with how many missed tackles they had and whatnot. It just seemed like they need bigger guys. I mean, you want to recruit from California, you want to recruit big guys from California. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just going to this championship DNA. Yeah, he recruited a bunch of those guys to go to Notre Dame this last year, and obviously they won the national title. What am I talking about? No, they didn't. They went to the national title.
They won their non-existent conference.
That's right, Casey. Yeah, it's key to recruit all those guys. You need talent. I don't know how to say it other than that ridiculously, because obviously you need talent, but you need talent. And I feel like USC hasn't had it these past couple of years.